Good morning, Evan. How are you doing this morning?
Good, John. How are you?
I am doing all right. Excited to be here today. This should be a pretty fun stream. For all of those in the audience, drop in, say hi to Evan. It makes it way more fun when you drop in Q&A. And this is a live show, so if you've got questions you want to ask Evan, you've got an amazingly talented person on the other end here. Just some housekeeping items before we get started, Evan. This is, I think we're at like stream 60 or so. So many people maybe already know the rules, but we're going to jump in. We're going to start with your story, Evan. I don't want the elevator pitch. I want the 3 to 5 minute Evan story. Sure. I want to get to know who you are on the other side. We're going to talk through what NextGen IT operation or NextGen operations look like, why the data matters to those NextGen operations. And at the end, we're going to recap with some steps on getting there. And so if you're in the audience and you want to take us in a whole different direction, go for it. Would love to have your conversation. But let's fire off. Most people know me, Evan. If they jumping on my show, maybe they don't know you. So give us an introduction and tell us your story.
Yeah, thanks, John. And, great to be here. I love the intro music, by the way. It's fantastic.
I know, it's like a fun jingle.
It comes up, I was bopping a little bit.
I know, I do too. Every show, I get excited every time.
And sorry, my camera's a little out of focus, but hopefully that will figure itself out in a few minutes.
It'll work itself out.
So I'll start, I guess, a little bit like 35 years ago, how I got into the industry. And I started as an MSP. And, I was graduating from Hofstra University. I had been working at Ticketmaster for a number of years. And some of the people at the university knew me and knew that I worked at Ticketmaster. So they came to me and said, hey, would you mind helping us with a project and put in computerized ticketing system into the university? We do everything manually. And I said, sure, no problem. And really knew nothing about tech, and probably, I'm a little better today after 35 years. And, so I said yes. And I called up one of my best friends from who's going to University of Michigan. He was a tech, computer science major. And we brought in all these companies and we selected one. And the provost calls me and says, great job. We'd love to have you support the system. And I said, I don't want to work for the school, and that's not really a future for me. I don't see it. He said, well, what will you do to come work here? And I said, give me some time to think about it. So we wrote a proposal and said, you're going to pay us as a company and you'll give us office space and the whole works. And he said the president came back and signed off on it. Next thing I knew, I had an office at the university. I had a company called Chips Computer Consulting. It was just me and my business partner. We'd come in the morning, we'd play Doom, and whoever lost had to decide who's picking, you had to pick up lunch that day. And then from there, we started to build the business. And it was really just taking clients from Novell to Windows NT and just connecting computers together. And there was no internet, there was no email. It was glorious days. But anyway, we progressed from there. And 30 years later, I sold the company with my business partner, David. Back in 2022, we were a MSP out of New York, part of True Profit Groups, and was, a great ride and just a phenomenal group of people that I worked with and that worked with me. And we built a great leadership team. Nordic Partners bought us out. And that brought me to Crushbank. So we started Crushbank a few years earlier before we sold chips. And the whole idea was so frustrating. Every time a ticket came in, we're starting over again. John gets it today, Evan gets it tomorrow. They do it differently. Time to resolution changes. Maybe I can't solve it. I got to escalate it, but John can solve it. You don't have that built-in intelligence. So we came up with the idea of ingesting data and trying to see if we could search for like tickets and search for things that weren't documented, but they were in ticket notes and all these kind of things. And that led us to the impetus to create Crushbank. And once it started to work and we started to use the original version of Watson, because we became part of the Watson program, we were able to start finding information and data, and we started to build on this concept to where we are today. And that is just, we've just become data experts over the last 8 years. And the way we ingest data, the way we are able to build these data lake houses, And the way we're able to use the large language models to really do a lot of the magic. Like there's a lot of magic that goes into what we do, but the large language models have become so powerful and so great. We're like, hey, let's just take advantage of that. Why are we trying to invent something that is better than, what we have? Mm-hmm. So we just became data experts, and we know how to normalize data, unify the data, put it in the right places. So the LLMs are like, yeah, I know how to answer this question. I'm going to go here. I'll go there. So that's the 5-minute background on me and how I got started in the industry. And, I love being an entrepreneur, and I like to, really just, I'm a person that loves structure. I'm a person that loves to build businesses and bring opportunities for people.
I love it, man. First off, we're going to step back. You jumped into, we played Doom, and the loser had to do what? What did I miss there?
So Dave and I would play Doom in the morning.
Okay.
Right? We get in, probably, we had the radio on in the background or whatever. We played Doom, and whoever lost had to decide what was for lunch, and they had to go pick it up.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That. Sorry, you have a decorated history, and I picked up on Doom and lunch. But that
date yourself a little bit, right? It's I mean, again, I started when there was no internet or anything else, and we hooked up these computers, and it was so cool. It was great times.
No, I know. I mean, there were a lot of things there with the Novell and T migration. Like the interesting thing I found in a parallel here was you always are on the beginning of something. And what I mean by that is you were kind of starting an MSP before MSPs were a thing. It was more break fix prior to MSP, of course. But you were at the beginning of that curve when that kind of started. You were kind of in the beginning of that era. Same with Crushbang. Like using IBM Watson before LLMs is like gives you, when people call themselves AI experts, I think you actually get to defend that statement, because I think expertise requires something like 5,000 hours or whatever the number is these days.
That's
So actually,
it was 10,000. Now AI sped it up to 5,000. I think.
Yeah, now AI's made it 1 hour, right? Now everybody's living on the tip of Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah,
the Dunning-Kruger curve is where we all live these days.
So it is funny because I have to give credit to David too, because he's really just so innovative on the tech side. And I always can smell a wave. So together it makes us really, kind of powerful. And, I look at the industry, especially MSP and the IT industry, as it changes like every 5 years, right? So one advantage we had, even though we were kids, we were 23 years old when we started, was that everyone was dealing with mainframes and other things. And they were trying to like figure out the new wave of what was coming on with Novell and T. And we were able to actually win business because that's all we knew, right? And we just had a different business model. And I think we kept that, throughout our journey for the 30 years, and then certainly here with Crushbank. And, we could have just stayed in the state that we were in, and, we'll get to the whole bad data thing. But in our old, original software that we built for Crushbank, bad data was a death sentence.
Yeah.
Right? You couldn't use our product. Now I have some thoughts and ideas around that.
Yeah. Well, he's really effective at data visibility. I want to step it back for a minute. Let's explain it like I'm 5, because we're going to get into some technical tops next. But help me understand a little bit about the importance of the work you're doing, the importance of data cleanliness, and for somebody that's maybe never been in the MSP industry, like a little bit of simplification on the thing that your business does before we go into the operations.
Yeah. So, it's simple in one sense. The better quality of the data, the better the outcomes, right? Because, the LLMs don't really know if it's truthful or not. And, it's going to build what seems to be strong and confident, right, answers. And, that's something that is, can be a little dangerous. But I think, when you have subject matter expertise, you can kind of flush that out, right? The worst people are the ones that just like copy and paste it, and don't even read it and don't even go through it. But, the thing that, we help in, our organization is really kind of identifying, what data you have, how you're doing it. And so our whole concept is to bring all your data, or the most relevant data into one place, right? And we go through that with you. So we'll say to you, hey, let's bring in, your ITSM. So maybe it's ConnectWise. And we say, okay, let's talk to you about what data's in there and how you put your data in there. And let's not ingest 9 years of tickets, right? Like, what do we really want to ingest here? And it's maybe 3 years, right? And it's maybe just current clients and other things. And same thing with your documentation, same thing with configs and all those things. And then we talk to you about SharePoint. Then we talk to you about your IT glue. And then we talk to you about the other things that we could bring in. For some clients, we bring in their CSTAT, information, because they want to be able to have the large language model, say, oh, your SLAs from this system, you have your CSTATs from here. We can do some correlation here. Right now, again, we're bringing it all into one central place in a data lake house, which is is different than a data lake. But we can take the most pertinent information that you have, and then people will say, well, my information's not great. We're missing so much stuff. I'll call you in a year. Those kind of things, and we have some answers for that too. But it's really the simplification of taking data for us, talking you through it, putting it essentially into a data lake house. We normalize it, we clean it, we do a lot of these things, and then we help you on your journey, which is, we can get into it in a bit with what some of our clients are doing. It's amazing.
Yeah, I want to step up. That's a great explanation. We have some comments in chat here. Dave, first off, and Tim both said hi. We said that during your introduction. But Dave said Dan is definitely the most technical MSP owner I've met. I love my conversations with David Tan.
Yeah.
Doom after coffee chats, loser buys lunch. I'd be in. I was really good at Doom back in the day.
Yeah,
I grew up very.
I think I peaked then. I think I've gone downhill since.
I think I peaked a little. What would mine have been? My equivalent would have been more like Halo as my peak, but it is same, but different. Or GoldenEye. GoldenEye would have been my peak maybe back then.
That's funny.
By the
way, Dave Moorman saying that about Dave Tan is like, those two guys are thick as thieves as far as how smart and talented. And talk about another guy who's like, I've learned so much from Dave Moorman. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah. We were part of TPG together. He's an incredible person.
And then I don't know how you answer this question, but I'd be curious to get your take on it.
I don't know. I think it's, I think it's part of because I have one set of unique talents and David is another. So, I'm not technical, right? I can talk it. I could have built you an infrastructure. I could have written a proposal about infrastructure, but when the gear showed up, I couldn't do anything with it. I mean, I can mount it, but other than that, David's the one and his team is doing all the magic, right? So I think it gave me a different perspective on really focusing on the business and the industry. My journey, I was, part of the, CMP events early on. I got to talk to a lot of people. I got to meet a lot of people. I got to really, then I joined True Profit Group because I met people at those events. And then, I started in 2005 with this amazing group and we grew together. And then, just being able to focus on the business, focus on, what was coming. And, David was so good about educating me on some of the technologies. And I was just be able to start identifying how we can build that business. And, I think that's really a big part of it, that I was able to really always focus on the business as, David focused on the tech.
It's always having a good operator to the visionary. Evan, you and I both are visionary syndromes. We need great operators. Though I bet you are a pretty good operator from what I've gotten to know about you.
Yeah.
What I hear is keeping your eyes on the waves, just networking and people and having the conversations and listening and identifying the trends throughout those noise is super critical. Kind of akin to what you guys do a little bit on the data side. But I want to step back. You used a lot of words that folks may or may not know, and I want to clarify because we want to assume we've got some starting point people here. Lake versus lake house. That's my first question. Just a simple ELI 5, explain like a 5, lake versus a data lake house. And then secondarily, Somebody, Tim in the audience asked, what are some of the common mistakes or misconceptions you find yourself coaching clients out of setting up a data lake house? So I'll let you take those and go with them where you want.
Yeah. So a data lake is what we originally did, and that's just bring all the data into one central repository, right? One central database. And the results were okay, but you really just like everything becomes different animals. And you're trying to normalize the data. And that's really key to part of this. Normalizing, and I'm not the exact right person to talk about this, but taking files and putting it into JSON and doing other things to make sure that the LLMs understand it, know how to read it. Sometimes we have to OCR documents. So again, the LLMs can read it properly. So there's a lot of things that we have to do. The difference between a data lake and a data lake house is that, again, a data lake is just where it's just one container, one database. But what we do is we put all the documents in as whole into a data lake. And then from there, we chunk up the documents, right? Depending on what it is. And some of it goes into a structured container, and some of it goes into an unstructured container. So ticket notes, ticket time entries, those things are going into, the unstructured side, right? And, there are other things like in documents, and then there's other things that go into the structured side. So when you ask a question and your large language model like Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, Copilot, whatever you want to use, connects to the MCP server that we've built. And then it says, okay, I understand this, and I need to go do calculations and analytics. I got to go to the structured, right? I got to bring back a whole document. I'm going to go to the data lakehouse. I got to bring back, a question about time entries. Tell me about, John, how, many hours did you put in last week, right? I got to go to the unstructured side. So that's the difference, the key difference between, someone who says, I got a data lake and I'm going to put all this stuff in there. They don't really understand how this all works. And, this has all changed on the fly in the last like 6-7 months ish. I hate to do that, but that's really, and that's why we're really data experts on this stuff. And we know how to chunk the data, we know where to put it, and we know how to have the LLMs access the best.
Yeah, I love it. I recognize that there's a lot here and we're jumping all over, but I think it's helpful to kind of level set for some folks, especially. I think one thing I want to get for the audience here, you've worked with lots of clients, you've worked with data consolidation or normalization and migration. Well, I wouldn't even call it migration, but data normalization and centralization is probably the better term here. And you've worked with clients with a probably disarray of data and a very organized set of data.
Yes.
Walk me through a customer, not a crushing pitch here, but like walk me through a customer conversation where they want to be able to establish a data lakehouse in a year. Maybe they want to work with you in a year. What do they need to be doing now to be able to be ready to be working with you in a year so that they can actually access some of the benefits of centralized data with AI?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that in two parts. Maybe why wait a year, and then if you are going to wait a year, right? So, for me, it's about really structuring your organization, right? How are you entering time in a ticket, right? How are you building your documentation and, your configs and everything else? So, to me, it's really putting together a plan on, having structured, I'll say, when I say structured data, I don't mean the actual structure of the data, but like, structuring a methodology of how you're going to, enter information into your systems, right? And then also there's probably a little bit of making sure, you have some cleanliness there. I'm one that always goes through our Dropbox, our, all of our storage, and I always dump files into an archive, folder to kind of clean up things and keep things easier, for, the purpose of relevance, right? And I think that's the other part of it is, like relevance, how you're structuring your data. Those are the things that you need to do. I would also say that you can start small today, right? You don't need to say, okay, we got all this data, let's just dump it in and bring it in. But you could start with 1 or 2 applications to bring in, right? And someone like ourselves, or or someone in our space can help do those things, because you really want to, for me, I think some of the brilliance here, John, like you're a little bit more of a blank canvas guy who can like look at a blank piece of canvas and create a horizon and do all these things, and you have this beautiful painting. I'm going to have stick figures a little bit, like it's just a very different. But I think in this world we come together a little bit more, and I'll tell you where, because you can just query and say, for hardened technologies, tell me what data what configurations that I'm missing compared to another client, or just from what it knows of now ConnectWise, right? And it will point those things out. You can ask really intelligent questions around, hey, can you look at my ticket history for the last 180 days on this company and tell me what documentation am I missing? What would help my engineers? What would help my manager? What would help the executives provide, better first time to resolution, or faster time to resolution, or any of the metrics that you're really following in your company. So I think there's a huge opportunity today, even if your data is not great, unless it's just not there, then that's a different story.
Understood. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Look, I'm all, the benefit of starting a company in the AI era is I get to start with data hygiene.
Yeah.
I just cannot implore the value of data hygiene and centralization. I'll throw out what I think might be some valuable things, to get started, but then I would love you to pile on. I would think systems consolidation and systems where there's duplicative information, consolidation of data. So that's a vendor sweep. Like, what are all the tools you're using, and like where could you consolidate information? Lower implementations if you have less applications, and identifying applications that at least have an API or a way to lift and shift data into some central data ecosystem, whether it's via API or whether it's some other format of transitioning data. MCP preferred, I would think, in today's world.
Yeah.
So an application sweep seems like a pretty easy one. A data cleanup project seems like a pretty low-hanging fruit. What are maybe some just a real quick hitter answers here? Just like some top 3 things, just tasks to be done if you're an MSP listening today that might go align with this.
Yeah, I mean, I like your comments. Consolidation is always hard because it's always hard to figure out where the duplicate data is, a lot of times. But certainly, picking and choosing where you're going to store certain types of data is definitely, a key to that. Yeah.
Do you have any frameworks for that? Any recommendations for people to take home and do that exercise?
Yeah, it's I think again, the LLMs can help with that. I mean, there's
that makes sense.
ways where you can, kind of, connect an MCP to an API and, just run a comparison that way. Mm-hmm. I think those are some good ways to use the APIs. I don't think APIs to MCP is the answer for skipping out on a data lakehouse.
Yeah.
But I think there are some relevant things that you can do. And I think that is definitely one of the ways to compare data and clean up some stuff for sure. But I think it comes down to I'm an EOS guy. And I think this is let's start with, leadership rocks. Let's start with, departmental rocks. Let's do those things. And I think that's a key way that I would tackle this internally. To really start, if you feel like I'm not ready, you got to get ready, because if you're not ready today, things are accelerating at a pace that I've never seen before. And if you don't start today, you're going to be left way behind really fast.
I can't agree with you more. I mean, sorry to interrupt there. I just
no.
dramatically. And I actually, by the way, very much actually think your recommendations were way better than mine. I get too technical too fast. I agree. Let's keep it simple. Leadership rocks, department rocks. this target to have every department go through and do a data cleanup. And I think Claude, you were right, like, or Copilot or ChatGPT, ask them for a framework to get started for stack ranking your data prioritization for your system. So those are like, keep it simple, stupid tasks, but they're the right things to do. Like, keep it simple. If you get it too complicated, this becomes arduous and never completed. Dave jumped in here. I'm just going to pull his question. Who are the top 10 clients most likely to fire us? And I think he's speaking from an MSP lens. You know, Dave, more than I do, but
I think he's, talking about, how you can, so we have some clients that have built, churn analyzers.
Yeah.
So when you get all this data in, and I'm talking about, your ERP system and, whether it's QuickBooks or NetSuite, once you start getting all that data in, we've been able to build these churn analyzers. So you could ask the question, who's at risk? Like, who are the top 10 clients that are going to fire us? And, what are the reasons why? And by the way, the LLMs are really smart. They kind of stay ahead of you a little bit. So they start giving you, would you like me to do this? Would you like me to do that? And all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that would be great, actually. And you can see a real profile of why they're going to fire you. And that could be because of SLAs. It could be that there's a change in leadership. It could be because, their AR is falling way behind, and there's usually a reason for that. Sometimes they can't afford you. Sometimes it's because they don't like you. There's a lot of different reasons. And when you bring in your CSTAT information and other things, it really does a great job of correlating. And I think that's where you can, that's why I'm saying the blank piece of, canvas is you can get really, crazy with this stuff and build some wild things. And, this client, we built a whole dashboard for them, and, they're in private equity. So, and whether you're in private equity or you want to one day sell to private equity, like, these are things that can help you dramatically in getting your payout in the end. So it's great.
We got a lot of comments pouring in here, Evan. You're a popular guy with lots of good questions. So thanks for playing along. We got two questions. We'll get to Max's first, and then we'll get to Ashley's.
Right.
How do legacy MSPs continue to adapt to best serve their customers in this era? I think that goes back to some of the things we said earlier, though, starting with departmental rocks and getting into it. But maybe you've got an answer that's different.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this question a little differently too. You want to talk about vision. My vision here, and I hate to say that, we always say in my family, we're not always right, but we show conviction all the time. So I'm going to show a lot of conviction. I think this is where, like, the project revenues dried up, right? There are just a lot of things that are changing right now. And I think this is the next wave of how MSPs are going to engage with their clients, right? You need to understand the data, curve here, because your clients don't understand it. Like, some of my, old clients, and they're asking me about this stuff. And, you as MSPs need to engage with them in this way to understand how they can do the same things. Like, although we're a little MSP focused, we've worked up with other companies that, aren't MSP, and it's really the same stuff that we're doing. But if you're, like, part of it is education, and really part of it is using the stuff, right? Like, when you start using it, you start to understand it a lot better. And again, it becomes to what we said before, you got to track your metrics, right? You got to track your scorecards. If you're going to implement this stuff, is everyone using it? How are they using it, right? It's maybe sitting over the shoulder of someone to see how they're using it and how they're engaging with it. And then it's, continually building on top of that in order to, change the focus and change the mindset of people, right? We're not looking to replace you. We're looking to make things better. We're looking to add more profitability. We're looking to do more things with this company, right? And that's got to be the mindset, right? If you're thinking it's just like, oh, let's just replace people, let's do all these things. It's like, John may know the best place to build an automation, right? Because you work on the NOC team. Or maybe it's, there's someone else knows the best place to build an agent, right, that can do certain things, so I don't get tied up with that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So like that's really the way I would start, building on this.
Yeah, and I think I was pulling up Ashley's comment here and starting to take some notes. I wanted to get into. I think she said, speaking of churn, what about QBR prep, running QBRs and follow up?
It's like I planted these questions.
Answer that. I've got a question, so let's go with that one. But give us some.
We've done this. This is really funny.
Yeah. No, I just kind of felt like a freebie, but do me a favor. Don't take the layup. Take the layup and then answer. If this feels like a layup, what are all the other layups? Like, just rattle off for people who are thinking, like, well, what are some use cases? So answer this one and then give us a couple more layups. Once you finally get the data consolidated.
So this one, absolutely, and so the question that, I first originally asked was, I have a meeting this Wednesday with this client, and, I'd like to, I want to be prepared for it. So this is kind of QBR-ish, but you get the idea. I want to know in the last 90 days, how are our SLAs? I want to know who are the best performers on their tickets. I want to know, I'm a little removed from the whole VCIO thing a little bit, but, I asked all these questions that a VCIO should really ask, right? So the great other thing here is you could build prompts inside your company that all the VCIOs can use, right? So those are things that, you could create a prompt library. So that's another powerful thing you can do, whether it's in your EOS meetings or some other place. It's like these departments and these managers need to start thinking this way. How do I start building prompts for my VCIOs? And when you start doing that, and when we put in this prompt, it just started to build, everything from the tech stack to client services. It showed any proposals that were out there, which ones were signed off on, which ones weren't, what the needs were from the ones that weren't signed off on. We also, and this is a huge hole, like talking about layups, like projects drove me crazy because we tried keeping projects outside of ConnectWise. We had them inside of ConnectWise. I could never get a straight answer from my team of where we are with projects. And, it also will tell you, all the projects that are in place right now for this client. And by the way, are they on budget? Are they on time? When was the last time someone put in information? So it really can build you, whether it's a QBR or that next meeting. And the thing I hated the most is when a client called me. I'm like, well, why is John calling me? He wants to speak to me. So I'd have to rally everyone. I pull the VCIO in, I pull the service manager in, I'm like, are there any issues? Like, what's going on here? And I could use the LLM to do probably 90% of that, right? In those kind of situations. So that's, and same thing for the VCIO, right? Like they get calls from clients all the time and they're, they don't want to get caught off guard. So you can just start immediately putting in a prompt, and you could have emergency prompts already in your library that you could just put in, and boom, you got the information.
I had to share this thing. I don't know, maybe I'm late to the show, but Microsoft 365 finally put out Copilot prompt libraries and a management admin interface, which I was very excited about to see. Again, they've had them for a while, but now you can pre-program all the prompts in the library and share them by department. So if you like what Evan just said, you can build your departmental prompts and put them directly into Copilot chat. And then when they land in Copilot chat, they can click on the prompts come by default for who they are. So thought that's
great.
Fruit. I didn't know about it until yesterday, but maybe I've been living under a rock. Maybe this is what everybody's doing, but I actually think that's a great thing to do if you're internally centralizing your data, having those prompts built, like maybe like a hackathon internally where everybody builds their own prompt library for their team, so everybody has it. That could be very fun. Or if you're an MSP working with customers, help them build their prompt library for their business so that they can accelerate value in Copilot or Claude or whatever it is. So I'm a big fan of prompt library. Very nerdy thing to be excited about, but yeah, it's pretty cool stuff.
I'll give you another layup real quick though. Like for
Yeah, yeah.
service managers, I'd always ask them, how's the team doing? Who are our best, techs, and who's maybe stealing time from us and those things, especially when COVID hit, right? Just here, it's just again the service manager could query so much information about their techs and their time entries. Tell me about John's, time card from last week, right? And they'll go in there and it can analyze it because they're like, password reset, has for 30 minutes when that's really a 5-minute thing, right? So it could pick up, anomalies, or it could pick up information, give you a good overview of those kind of things. It could also just say, who's my noisiest clients in the last 90 days, right? Or, give me an analysis of how we can make this client, more happy, or what documentation could we build? Like there's so much you can do, and every person's going to have a different perspective that they can use their experience to be able to query your data and really just start building. What we've all really tried to do is a well-behaved MSP with well-behaved clients. And, it's so hard with the turnover that everyone's experienced in the last 10 years and the outsourcing and those kind of things. And how do we get, oh my God, Evan just started today and he's useless for the first 30 days. And then hopefully he's somewhat useful for the next 30 days. He doesn't really make an impact on our team because he doesn't know the clients. He doesn't know the tech. He doesn't know any of these things. Well, you think Evan's going to be better tomorrow with this kind of solution? I think so.
I like it, Evan. We've gotten into some really good, I think training's good, QBR's good, churn analyzer, customer escalation, customer insight, like lots of powerful use cases to use once that data is centralized. We had a whole run of show. I don't think we asked any of the questions on the run of show because the audience kept taking us in great directions. But it's been fun. We're going to start wrapping up here, Evan. One question I always like to ask before I go into the ending segment. What is a question I didn't get to ask today that you were thinking we would talk about?
I think it's really comes down to, I hear a lot like, why not build it myself? And I think it's, there are companies that are always trying to do that. And they say, well, we'll talk to you in 6 months. We're going to try and build it ourselves or do those kind of things. And, I think when they go down the journey of how hard it is to understand all the APIs and the normalization of data and really token management and governance and security and all these things that, you have to take into account. It's the same reason why don't all your clients just handle IT internally? It's really the same kind of concept. Well, are they going to build an NOC team? Do they have the expertise in backups and AV and cybersecurity and help desk support and all these other things? You can't just hire a person that knows all those things. You can't just say to your database guy, take over my infrastructure. They don't really understand it. You can't take a database person and say, take over my AI, right? And those kind of things. Trust me, they think they know what they're doing. They really don't.
I'm with you. I've kind of, we riffed on this pre-show, and I always say, first you got to there's a million technical reasons. I think everybody wants to jump on the technical reasons why you shouldn't do it. And to be fair, those are probably the more important reasons you buy versus build in today's world on a lot of tech, even though it is awfully attractive to build yourself. I always break it down at like the cost to build, the raw token economics, like it's a FinOps conversation. How much does it cost for you to build it versus how much can you just buy it for? That's always been the conversation. Then I always say the cost of standing still, because when you build it, it is there. And if you replicated something or you built it to a certain degree, it is not going to change in the next 12 months unless you continue to maintain it. So building in the cost of maintenance and the cost of standing still. And then this is the one that I've been kind of like wondering why the most is like the cost, the missed opportunity cost. Like if you're building an operational platform, why aren't you doing that for your customer instead with those hours? Like that's billable time you're spending. So not only the cost of the tokens and the cost of maintenance, but then the cost of not doing it for your customer. We talk about wanting to serve our customer 1 or past customer 0. Those become my 3 core reasons. I stump speechy, big software guy, and I don't think apocalypse is real, but That's a whole other show, and we're at the minute mark. Sorry, I had to get my little stump speech in there with you, Evan.
That's amazing. I love your perspective.
But I think it's just like those are three real business reasons. They don't have to be technical, but there's a million technical reasons.
And I think there's just a huge opportunity here for MSPs, and I think this is the next opportunity. And I really do. And if you said, "Where's the opportunity?" There's a huge opportunity in this. And the sooner you start learning this, the sooner you're gonna make money off of this.
That's my thought: is why rebuild your PSA when you can rebuild something for your client that creates a lot more value and they'll pay you for it.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's more money on the other side. All right, we're going to go into the rapid fire wrap up segment, Evan. This has been really fun. If anybody's got any comments they want to leave for Evan before we sign off, now would be the time to drop them in. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to jump into this rapid fire segment, Evan. I threw the show notes, but I didn't include these. I hope. I try not to every time because I like them to be on the fly. The rules are very simple. You have as much time as you want to think about the answer, but you only get one sentence to answer the question, Evan, which I think is going to be difficult for you and would be impossible for me. So, one data habit every MSP should adopt tomorrow.
I think it's knowing your data.
Okay. That's it. One sentence. I know it's really tough. One reason AI projects fail.
Because it's really more becomes a proof of concept than understanding the entire journey of the project.
If you only got to choose one of these two things, would you rather have cleaner data or a better model?
Cleaner data.
I know your answer because you're such a guy, and I think it's the right answer too. But that's a tough one. Most MSPs aren't ready. Brian said it's a great conversation. Great to see you, Brian. Where you been this morning? She said hi. It's good to know you were there. Most MSPs aren't ready for the AI they're building, buying. True or false?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
I know because it's two different questions. Most MSPs aren't ready for the AI that they are buying. True or false?
I would say true.
I would say true. Will data quality become a competitive moat or table stakes in the next 2 years?
Oh, I think it's competitive moat for sure.
I think so too. I do think it eventually becomes table stakes, but right now it's a competitive note for sure.
Yes.
Right. Final question in our sign off here, Evan, before we really go, there's like 3 wrap up segments. Finish this sentence. Your AI is only good as
your data.
I know, gosh, that was just like I don't know how I could have given you an easier one for that one, Evan. But,
that's true.
It's pretty easy. Yeah, that might just be your tagline over there, man. Your AI is only as good as your data. Like that feels good.
Yeah.
Did we just come up with a GTM campaign? All right. Anyway, I mean, it's fun. It's always fun to be on Coffee Chats. Brian, Ashley, Max, Dave, Tim, everybody that joined us this morning that didn't say hi. It's great to see you here on Coffee Chats. The very, very last thing on the ending segments that never end is the shameless plug. I'm always appreciative, Evan, of you taking the time to join on the show. So sign us off with why they should get a hold of you, how they should get a hold of you, and anything else you want here as we wrap up.
Yeah, look, I'm always willing to give back. And anyone who's got questions about this stuff, please reach out. It's not a sales pitch. I have people that do that kind of stuff. But evan@crushbank.com is how to get in touch with me. Love talking about this subject. Obviously know MSPs very well. I'm always at trade shows and other events. So come seek me out. But, really it is all about your data. And I'd love to share some tips and tricks. And if you really want to get started, more than happy to help. So, not a big sales pitch, but just some honest way that I've run my whole life, my whole business, and what I do in this world.
I love it. Well, Daniel signed us off. Thank you, gents. Great convo. Thank you, Evan. A great convo. We will see you on the road here soon, Evan. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, have a great morning. Cheers.